The smell of oil, grease, and exhaust fumes was my daily perfume. For 20 years, I'd pushed a broom, emptied trash, and scrubbed floors at Miller's auto shop. My name's Frank, and I was the janitor. Just Frank, the janitor. Nobody really saw me, not truly. I was part of the background, like the old tires stacked in the corner or the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. I'd seen a lot of engines in my time. Heard their coughs, their grumbles, their smooth purrs when a good mechanic finally coaxed them back to life. I watched the mechanics, too, day in and day out. Larry, with his gruff exterior but a surprising gentleness with delicate parts. Mike, the younger hotshot, quick with a wrench and even quicker with a joke. And Mr. Miller himself, a man who built his business from the ground up, his hands still calloused from years under hoods. I learned things just by being there. Little things. The way a certain rattle meant a loose belt, the distinct smell of burning oil that pointed to a leak. I'd never touched an engine in a professional capacity, mind you. But in my head, I'd fix them. I'd watch Larry struggling with a finicky carburetor and think, he should try adjusting the idle screw a hair to the left. Most times I was right. I kept it to myself, though. Who'd listen to the janitor? One sweltering Tuesday, a beat-up Ford pickup rolled in. It belonged to old Mrs. Henderson, a sweet lady who brought us homemade cookies every Christmas. Her truck, her lifeline, was wheezing like an old man trying to climb stairs. Mr. Miller took a look, then Larry, then Mike. All of them scratched their heads. "Engine seized, Mrs. Henderson," Mr. Miller said, his voice softer than usual. "It's an old truck. Might be cheaper to just get a new one." Mrs. Henderson's face crumpled. I saw it from behind my dustbin. "Oh dear," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I can't afford a new one. This truck, it was my late husband's, means the world to me." My stomach twisted. I knew that truck. Knew how she'd polished the chrome herself, how she'd talked about the memories tied to it. The mechanics tried a few more things, but after an hour, they just shook their heads. It was a goner. Later that afternoon, during our coffee break, the mechanics were still talking about Mrs. Henderson's truck. "Pity," Larry grunted, taking a swig of his lukewarm coffee. "That old Ford had some life left in it, I bet, if only we could get past that seize." "Yeah, well, some things are just beyond fixing," Mike added, leaning against a toolbox. That's when it happened. The words just came out of me. "I think I could fix it." Silence. Thick, heavy silence. All three pairs of eyes turned to me. Mr. Miller, Larry, Mike. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to amusement. Mike was the first to laugh. "You, Frank." "Our Frank, the janitor? Gonna fix a seized engine." He snorted, then looked at Larry. "You hear that, Larry? Frank's gonna show us how it's done." Larry just raised an eyebrow. Mr. Miller, though, he looked at me with a curious glint in his eye. "You really think so, Frank?" he asked, not unkindly. I felt a flush creep up my neck. What had I done? But the words were out, and something inside me, a quiet, stubborn thing, refused to back down. "Yes, Mr. Miller. I think so." Mike, still chuckling, piped up, "All right, Frank, here's a bet. You fix that engine, and I'll buy you a steak dinner. A fancy one. If you don't, you gotta polish my tools for a month." A month of polishing Mike's greasy tools? The thought made me wince. But then I thought of Mrs. Henderson's sad face, and something clicked. "Deal," I said, firmer than I expected. Mr. Miller watched us, a small smile playing on his lips. "All right, Frank. You got until closing. Don't break anything." And so it began. The moment they all went back to their bays, I walked over to Mrs. Henderson's truck. It looked bigger now, more intimidating. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 20 years, I reached for a wrench. My hands, usually clumsy with anything more intricate than a mop handle, felt different. They remembered every movement I'd seen the mechanics make. I knew where the distributor cap was, how to check the spark plugs, the feel of a good, solid connection. I started with the basics, things I'd absorbed from years of watching. I checked the oil, the coolant, the battery. Everything seemed okay on the surface. Then I got to the engine itself. It was grimier up close, covered in years of road dust and oil splatters. I felt a surge of doubt. What was I doing? I was a janitor. But then I thought of Mrs. Henderson again. Her kind eyes, her delicious cookies. I couldn't let her down. I remembered Larry talking about a common issue with older Fords, something about a sticky valve causing a temporary seize. It was a long shot, but it was a shot. I found the valve covers, carefully unbolted them. My hands trembled slightly. This was it. Inside, it was a mess of carbon buildup. I remembered Mike complaining about cheap fuel causing this. I got a can of engine cleaner, one I'd seen them use countless times. I sprayed, I poked, I gently wiggled. It was slow going, delicate work. My back ached, my arms felt heavy, but I kept at it. Hours passed. The shop emptied out, the lights started to dim. Larry and Mike had gone home, probably laughing about the janitor mechanic. But Mr. Miller stayed. He sat at his desk, pretending to do paperwork, but I knew he was watching me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I had done all I could do with the valve. I put everything back together, bolt by tiny bolt, making sure each one was snug. My hands were black with grease. My face probably had a smudge or two, but I didn't care. I climbed into the driver's seat. My heart was pounding like a drum. This was the moment of truth. I turned the key. The engine coughed. A terrible, metallic cough that sounded like it was giving up the ghost. My stomach dropped. I tried again. Another cough, a little less violent this time. And then, a sputter. A weak, uncertain sputter. I pumped the gas pedal gently, just like I'd seen Larry do 1,000 times. And then, slowly, haltingly, the engine turned over. It wasn't a smooth purr yet, more like a rough idle, but it was running. It was alive. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, a lump in my throat. I couldn't believe it. Frank, the janitor, had started Mrs. Henderson's truck. Mr. Miller walked over, a genuine, wide smile on his face. He leaned down and looked at the engine. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just listened to the uneven rumble. "Well, Frank," he finally said, his voice full of surprise and something else, respect. "I'll be damned." The next morning, the first thing I saw was Mike staring at the truck with his jaw hanging open. Larry was beside him, a look of utter bewilderment on his face. "It runs," Mike stammered, pointing at the truck as if it were a ghost. "It runs," I said, trying to keep my voice even, but a huge grin was spreading across my face. Mike just shook his head, then burst out laughing. Not a mocking laugh this time, but one of genuine astonishment. "All right, Frank. A steak dinner it is. You earned it, old man." Mrs. Henderson came to pick up her truck later that day. When Mr. Miller told her I was the one who got it running, her eyes welled up. She hugged me, a tight, grateful hug, and I felt something warm spread through my chest. From that day on, things were different. I was still Frank, the janitor, but I was also Frank, the guy who fixed Mrs. Henderson's truck. The mechanic started asking my opinion sometimes, little things about odd noises or stubborn bolts. I still pushed my broom, still emptied the trash, but now there was a quiet understanding in the air. A respect. I learned that day that sometimes the most unexpected people have the most unexpected talents. And sometimes all it takes is a little bet, a kind old lady, and a whole lot of heart to show the world what you're truly capable of.